All right. Dear Andy, I am very honored to have you today as my guest. To keep this interview concise and focused, I would like to begin asking the first two general questions. And before we start, I would like to mention, so Andrew Teel is at University of California, Santa Barbara. He's a professor at Electrical and Computer Engineering. He's a fellow of IEEE and IFAC. Thanks, Andy, for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I enjoyed listening to the three previous guests that you had, Francesco and Warren and Jeff. So yeah, it's fabulous.
Thanks a lot. So the first question is, as being one of the role models in control systems field, what inspired you to pursue a career in this field and how did you get started?
Well, let's see. So my father was an engineer. He worked for General Electric. My mother was a elementary school teacher for a while, and then after I was born, she stopped. But so she trained me well in math, and my dad kind of inspired me to follow the line of engineering. So when I went to college, when I went to Dartmouth, I started studying engineering. Didn't really know what I was going to do with it. And at one point, a senior who I respected had landed a job at General Electric where my dad had worked. And so I told my dad I'd maybe follow in that guy's footsteps. And my dad told me succinctly that no, I should not do that. So he didn't have a suggestion about what I should do, but he just told me that I shouldn't do that. I think he didn't want me to follow in his footsteps that closely. I think partly because he really didn't enjoy his job. And the lesson that I took from that really was I really needed to maintain some optionality in what I was going to do, keep my options open. So I, kept working in school, and I took control systems as a senior in the fall, and by far that was my favorite class. And I figured, there's more to learn there, and in the theme of keeping my options open, I decided that it would be fun to pursue a master's degree in that field. Dartmouth, where I went, was willing to allow me to jump right into the master's program, and I thought maybe some other schools would be open to that as well. Only one was, it was Berkeley. I eventually saw my application and saw that Praveen Varaya was the one who had kind of identified me as somebody worth taking a chance on, which I really appreciated. I got to Berkeley. I had a fellowship for the first year, ironically, from Dartmouth. And I was fortunate enough for Shankar Sastry to be willing to allow me to join his group. And moreover, to allow me to really work on whatever I wanted to work on. He gave me that flexibility, which was fabulous. I had no idea that I really wanted to get a PhD at that point. I was surrounded by people who knew they did. That was their goal. But I figured, well, I'd take the screening exam or whatever it was called then, preliminary exam, just to see if I would pass. And I managed to pass. There were a lot of people who were so set on getting a PhD that they put so much pressure on themselves that they didn't pass. But so for me, that was just continuing to maintain my options and go forward. Still no idea that I would want to be a professor. And right at that time, the nonlinear control field was at a fascinating stage where some really respected researchers had made an error in one of their papers. And now everybody was working to point out the error and to fix the error. And for me, it just opened my eyes to the fact that professors are fallible. And I was fallible, so I could maybe, be a professor myself. So I kept going, and yeah, I guess that's the extent of it. I guess the thing that would be the clincher is as I continued to work, there were a lot of interesting problems that people were studying, and it was the time where nonlinear adaptive control was kind of the hot topic. And it was kind of a cutthroat topic. I mean, everybody was working on it, and you had to be on top of your game to be making the latest, greatest contribution. And I found that a little bit stressful. So I decided to kind of etch out my own path where I would work on a different problem that people didn't know how to solve. They had identified it as a problem that remained but needed a solution. And I just kind of worked on that for a while and ended up coming up with a novel solution that solved a problem that people didn't know how to solve. That was the nested saturation algorithm for controlling systems with input saturation, or also feed forward systems. And just that creative process and coming up with something new that was useful to people just left me addicted to the field. I mean,
it was useful to me. I mean, and I'm sure to many people.
Yeah,
it was a great paper.
Just the thrill of creating really got me addicted, and yeah, been going that way ever since. So that's my long-winded answer to that question.
Awesome, great story. The second question is, certainly, how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance while pursuing a demanding career in engineering and academia? For example, what hobbies or activities do you engage outside your professional career?
Yeah, good question. As I mentioned, I enjoyed listening to your other interviewees, and I noted Jeff Sharma pushing back a little bit on the dichotomy between work and life, and I tend to agree with him. We shouldn't minimize the joy we get out of creating, as I indicated already. That's an important part of life, creating things, and we get to do that through the jobs we have, and so that's a real pleasure. But yeah, otherwise, some of the things that I like to engage in. Before COVID hit, I would always go to the UCSB gym and enjoy interacting with students there and working out. They would coach me on technique for the big compound lifts, and I would kind of coach them on how to get through graduate school or whether to apply to graduate school. One of the students I ran into is now a graduate student at UC Irvine working with Magnus Egerstedt. So
that's nice.
That was a success from the gym time. When COVID hit, I couldn't go to the gym anymore, but I was still addicted to that as well. And so I put a squat rack in my garage and continue now to do my workouts here at home. I don't get to interact with the students anymore, which is a disappointment, but that's still a passion of mine. When my children were young, certainly the work-life balance came through focusing on spending time with them, playing with them. I was my son's baseball coach for about 10 years, which was a blast. And yeah, just watch them grow and be a part of that. They both got married this summer, so
that's nice. Congrats.
Nice journey, and it's fun to see them in that stage now. I also enjoy taking walks and listening to podcasts. So there's a lot to keep the mind busy.
Thanks a lot. So next, let us transition to two questions related to research. Could you please provide an overview of your current research and share what excites you the most about it?
Sure. Yeah, I continue to work on stochastic hybrid systems. I find them interesting because they're incredibly versatile in terms of the phenomena that they can capture, and also because they're not very well understood, and also because not that many people are working on them. As I kind of mentioned in my first answer, I enjoy working on problems that not everybody is tackling at the same time. It gives me space to be as creative as I possibly can. And so, yeah, I just find that a really rich class of systems. There are a lot of, once you understand stochastic hybrid systems, there are a lot of creative, novel control algorithms that you can design and come up with that are related to, maybe decision-making processes, or just understanding the behavior of maybe networked control systems, all sorts of different applications where these systems apply. And I find them fascinating because they're challenging and yeah, not very well understood yet. There's a lot left to figure out there. So let's see. So that, I guess, addresses
the question. Yeah.
The question.
If you want to add anything.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add to that.
So suppose you had the ability to use your expertise in control systems to address one of today's major global issues. Which issue would you choose and how you approach?
Mm. Yeah, that's a really tough question. Certainly because a lot of what I've done over the years is kind of on the theory side, and I get excited when I see other people using it. But I guess if I had to pick something, and I don't know that I would have any idea how to start on it, it would be issues related to health, longevity, and strength. It's interesting to, listen to studies that come out and how they can be very contradictory at times, and they're just based on observations that may not take into account all of the relevant variables, and you're left really scratching your head about, what is the optimal thing to do for your health and your strength and your longevity. So, and I mean, having those things creates so much quality in your life, and is so important. And I think people, get bogged down and lose their steam when those things fail. So I think I would try to address those problems, and they seem like big data problems. So I guess I would be, drawn into that area. But it would be great to be able to have much more confidence in our understanding of those issues.
Thanks so much. Now, I would like to shift our focus to two questions related to education. The first one is based on your expertise, a significant expertise in the field. What advice would you give to young professionals who are looking to make a lasting impact on their students and the field of education, control education as a whole?
Yeah, good question. I think the biggest impact that I've had over time has really been through the relationships that develop with students, interacting with them even outside of work, outside of research. I guess the general principles are, be a good example, show them what good research looks like, be kind. Don't be overbearing, be an inspiration. I think those intangible qualities are some of the most important things that come to mind. And then, train them to think well, to think critically, to think out of the box. There's a lot to it. But I think in general, they're just thirsty to soak up knowledge, and we have it to dispense, and we need to do it in a way that builds them up.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. The second one is about, this rise of distance learning, online education, AI. How do you envision the future of classroom teaching, especially in the context of engineering and research? How do you think the role of the professors will evolve in the coming years? Because everything is right now going crazy.
Yeah, that's another really good question. I have certainly not been a part of trends like, MOOCs, and did not particularly enjoy online instruction. Somewhat related in my mind is the fact that it seems like a lot of companies are going back to requiring on-site, in-office participation, recognizing how important human interactions are for creativity. I tend to feel that small classroom personal interaction with professors is going to become more and more valued by students as it might move in other directions with, online education. But at the same time, possibly may become more and more undervalued by administrators. So I wonder how that will balance out. But I think students will continue to thirst for personal interaction with faculty and small classrooms. And I'm not sure the financial incentives will align properly with administrators just to make that continue to function well. But my fingers are crossed. We're all different. We all have different strengths, and there's some people who are going to excel at broad distribution of ideas in settings like MOOCs, and there are others of us who really excel in the smaller classroom setting, and hopefully there's room for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I love small classrooms. This semester I am teaching linear control systems to 7 students, graduate level, perfect.
Yeah.
Last semester, undergraduate, I was teaching undergraduate controls to around 90 students. So 90 to 7 is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the final part of this short interview, I would like to change the focus to several personal questions that I am eager to hear your responses.
Okay.
The first one is, can you please share a memorable experience you had with a mentor, with a colleague, or with a student that has left a lasting impression on you or on your work?
Sure. Yeah, I guess what comes to mind is not a singular event, but just the 6-month postdoc I had with Laurent Praly at École des Mines in France in the summer of 1992. As I mentioned, at Berkeley, I pretty much worked alone, and I was able to develop my creativity, but I would say my rigor was not as fully developed as I would have liked it to be. Spending 6 months with Laurent Praly changed everything in that regard. The man's brilliant, but he is, if nothing else, completely rigorous in everything that he does, and I learned a ton from him, invaluable contributions to my development. So yeah, I guess I would single that out as that period of time. I don't know exactly what he saw in me when he chose to hire me as a postdoc, but I'll never forget it and always will be thankful. So I would definitely answer that 6-month period to that question.
Awesome, thanks. So second one, if you could collaborate with any famous scientist or engineer from history, it can be from the controls field, who would it be and why?
Yeah, when I listened to the other 3 that you interviewed, I think each kind of found a way to dodge this question a little
Yes.
bit. And I think I'm going to as well. I have 2 answers for you. So neither one really addresses it directly, but kind of does. So the first thing that came to my mind was the period where absolute stability was kind of at the forefront of research in control systems back in the 50s and 60s. And I studied that period pretty thoroughly because it impacted the algorithm that I came up with for the nested saturation algorithm. So all of those absolute stability ideas were important in me figuring out how to make that work. And I wouldn't say that I necessarily would want to collaborate with anybody from that era, but I would love to be a fly on the wall and just kind of observe the interactions that were going on then. For example, I mean, at that time, people were throwing out conjectures about what was true. You don't see that very much anymore, right? We don't really operate at the level of here's my conjecture, and then people think about it and say, well, no, that's not right, but how about this? And finally get to something that works. And another interesting aspect of that time was, we had apparently, brilliant scientists in the US, but also brilliant scientists in the USSR who were both thinking about these problems at the same time, kind of coming from it with different strengths. And that interaction or not would have been fascinating to observe. So again, I'm not sure that I would want to collaborate with any of them, but it would have been fascinating to see a documentary of that or be a fly on the wall. But as far as actual collaborations goes, the other answer that comes to mind is there's so much more to successful collaboration than just putting a couple of bright people together in a room and letting them go at it. And some of the other things that are important are really to also have a common vision and just gel in terms of your ability to collaborate. And that's not going to be generically true for everybody. And so I guess my answer is really that I'll stick with the collaborations that I've had over time. The people that I've interacted with, I've treasured those collaborations, and they usually are at the same time really good friends. So it's something about the way we interact that enables a collaboration that potentially is more powerful than it would be if I was, just thrown in a room with some incredibly bright person. So I'm very happy with the collaborations that I've had and wouldn't trade them for anything. That's my answer.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Finally, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would you say?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind, and this goes back to my first answer on, and maybe I didn't flesh it out as much as I intended, but in my process, I didn't have a particular goal in mind, and I recall feeling a little bit uncomfortable about that, because people would frequently ask me, what's your goal? And I really couldn't put it into words, and I might not have even have had one. And that felt wrong at the time. I think the dogma back then was you needed to have a goal and set your sights on that goal and try to achieve that goal. But, that can lead to disappointment and knock you off of a path that can get you to a good place. I've heard people say recently, for example, the Dilbert cartoonist, I'm not sure it's original to him, but he's always talked about prioritizing systems over goals, and to put into place systems that align with your values and allow those systems to propel you to a place that you're going to enjoy in life. And there's probably a way to parse that out in terms of control systems as you think about maybe set points versus, the algorithms that are involved. But I would just really say prioritize systems over goals. Don't get bogged down with goals. Put into place systems that align with your values. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the friendships you're going to make along the way. Your accomplishments will probably get superseded and recessed into the annals of history, but the memories and the friendships that you make will last your entire lifetime. So put yourself in a position where you're exposed to people who you may click with when it comes to collaborations. And I'll say that I owe a ton to Peter Kokotovic, who brought me to UCSB, where he created an environment that was exactly like that. So almost all of the collaborations that I've had over my career have come from the people who've come through UCSB, and Peter put me in a position to profit from that. So I guess those are some of the principles that I would tell to my younger self and to people getting started as well. But I will also say, as the other interviewees mentioned, everybody's different. My advice may not be appropriate for everybody. And so good luck finding your way.
Thanks so much. So, Andy, I want to express my gratitude for your time and for your responses. And I wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you personally in the near future at ACC, CDC, or some other conference.
Yeah, Tansel, thank you very much for doing this. It was a pleasure. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you soon too.